I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
You had put cigarettes out on this poor little child. There was evidence of that from the pictures. Some of the bruises were in the shape of a belt buckle.
Man, I ain't gonna let you, I ain't gonna let you.
Release Ortiz Nieves.
You had put cigarettes out on this poor little child. There was evidence of that from the pictures.
He was facing charges of felony murder and first-degree child abuse in Michigan for the murder of 4-year-old Giovanni Mejias, the son of his then-girlfriend. Kent County deputies arrived at the Gaines Township trailer, where Ortiz Nieves was left in charge of multiple children under 11. Giovanni was discovered lifeless on the kitchen floor. An autopsy revealed internal bleeding from an abdominal tear, a result consistent with adult-inflicted trauma, not that of a child.
They're alleging you murdered one Giovanni Mejias.
Now, in court, Ortiz Nieves denied any wrongdoing. The prosecutors insisted otherwise, and the medical examiner confirmed the injuries weren't accidental.
The degree and the location and the number of injuries was remarkable. In my opinion, this injury is inflicted with blunt force from an adult individual.
But the defense disagreed and even suggested that perhaps the injuries were caused by other children. The mother of the child stood with Ortiz Nieves.
Sock him, push him. He was just mean to him.
Did you ever witness Nelson physically discipline kids?
Never.
Now, it is Ortiz Nieves' turn to plead his case.
I'm gonna continue to say I will take a lie detector test to prove that I never abused any of Sonia's kids or never abused Giovanni and never intentionally meant to hurt Giovanni but to help him.
However, during the sentencing, after Ortiz Nieves was found guilty, the victim's mother seemed to change her stance.
To my baby, we'll never bring him back. I'll never see him grow up, fall in love, go to school.
In the end, Judge Mark Trusock strongly condemned Ortiz Nieves' actions.
You can claim your innocence, but I sat over this trial and I carefully listened to all the testimony, and the jury verdict was clearly correct in this matter. There is no question whatsoever that you committed this murder and that you beat this little boy to death. You had put cigarettes out on this poor little child. There was evidence of that from the pictures.
However, what Ortiz Nieves did in the courtroom was even crazier.
Of a belt buckle.
Man, I ain't gonna let you, I ain't gonna let you sit here and say no crazy shit about me, man. No, man, because he's saying shit he don't even know, man.
Sir, anybody says anything back there,
After a while, he was brought in, and Judge Mark sentenced him to life imprisonment and an additional 80 to 150 years for first-degree child abuse.
Lowest form of human life that I've been able to observe or see. You are a monster, and quite frankly, you are evil. What you did was sickening and disgusting. We're done. Take him to prison, please.
But that wasn't the end. 6 months later, the victim's mother was back in court.
My first charge is perjury. I lied under oath for a man who I thought loved and cared for me. Failure to protect my children and blaming a sibling on a sibling. And I have to live with the fact that I failed my children. Your Honor, what you decide to give me is nothing compared to what I have been through.
She was sentenced to 5 to 10 years behind bars. However, this wasn't the only time a convict freaked out during their sentencing. Take, for example, the case of Pearl Fernandez.
He said, well, it's because my mom shot me in the face with a BB gun.
They are evil people for what they did.
Who's facing charges of first-degree murder. On May 24th, 2013, 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez was brutally abused and killed by his mom, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend, Isaro Aguirre, because they thought Gabriel was gay. Now, in court, prosecutors highlighted the numerous injuries Gabriel had and pushed for the maximum sentence. They called on witnesses, including Gabriel's teacher.
Are you sure that that's what really happened? And then he did eventually tell me, and he was like really angry, and he said, well, it's because my mom shot me in the face with a BB gun.
And I know I'm not alone in hoping that they experience the same abuse in their lifetime and worse. They are evil people for what they did. I don't assign number 28 to another student because I feel that it's only his number now. and it's a way for me to honor him in my classroom.
Now it's the medical examiner's turn to address the court.
To make sure I got all the BBs, I had to take the body back into the x-ray room on the second day, fluoroscope the whole body to make sure there weren't any more metallic particles in the body.
A child welfare worker and a hospital doctor also told the court what they witnessed.
I felt terrible. I've never seen anything in my entire career. I've never seen anything like that. I wasn't prepared. I was speechless.
I have this picture of him, of this mutilated little body, seared into my mind, and that will stay with me forever. I can't forget that.
Then, it was finally time for Gabriel's family members to tell the court how they felt. Gabriel's grandfather took the stand.
He had swore that he was going to bring Gabriel back, and he did it. I don't know what he started talking about. We had to go to court one of these days, let him come home. And I promised that.
Other family members addressed the court.
Gabriel had unconditional love for you, and you took advantage of that, knowing he will never turn you in.
However, Pearl Fernandez had something to get off her chest.
I want to say I'm sorry to my family for what I did. I want to say I'm sorry for this, what happened. I wish Gabriel was alive. Every day, I wish that I made better choices.
Despite all these, the defense had another perspective.
The evidence will also show that despite the horrific abuse, Isaro never intended for Gabriel to die. He is guilty of murder, but the special circumstance alleged that he intended to kill Gabriel through the infliction of torture is not true.
Nevertheless, despite the defense's best efforts, the jury found Pearl and her boyfriend guilty. But before giving the sentence, Judge George G. Lomelli gave the killers a piece of his mind.
The conduct was horrendous, inhumane, and nothing short of evil. It is unimaginable the pain that this child probably endured. Both in the middle of the night, you wake up and you think of the injuries that you subjected this poor young man, this poor 7-year-old, and that it tortures you.
Eventually, he read their sentence.
Defendant Pearl Cynthia Fernandez entered a plea to murder in the first degree and further admitted the special circumstance of intentional murder by torture. That for the crime of murder in the first degree committed under the special circumstance, that the murder was intentional and involved the infliction of torture, defendant Esadio Aguirre shall be put to death within the walls of the California State Prison at San Quentin.
Pearl got life without parole, and Aguirre got the death sentence. Their appeals were denied, and they are now serving their sentence in prison. However, while Pearl's actions were shocking, it was nothing compared to the atrocities committed by 25-year-old Michael Sykes, who's facing multiple charges, including murder and robbery, after a horrific incident at a Staten Island hotel. Michael suspected his girlfriend, Cutler, of talking to an ex-boyfriend, so he stole her cell phone during an argument. The next day, he brutally attacked Cutler and her 3 daughters, 1-year-old Ziana Cutler, 4-month-old Malia Sykes, and 2-year-old Miracle. Only Miracle survived. Now, in court, Cutler's sister couldn't hold herself.
We implore you not to let Rebecca down as you consider the sentence. The request of the family is that the maximum penalty for the crime for which the defendant was convicted be imposed.
The judge also had some strong words for Michael.
You failed as a husband, you failed as a father, you failed as a human being. In my opinion, based on what you did, you do not deserve to ever see the light of day.
It's now time for Michael to learn his fate.
Murder in the first degree for killing Ziana Cutler and the others named therein is a sentence of life without parole.
As for Michael, he continues to serve his sentence in prison. However, Michael Sykes wasn't the first evil parent in court. Like in the case of 31-year-old Camilla Gamet.
We have no choice but to send her where she will also die. I can't believe she stands before you doing this.
Who's in court for the brutal murder of her 38-year-old boyfriend, Marcel Hill. In May 2012, police responded to a distress call from Gamet's apartment, where they found her covered in blood, surrounded by a broken floor lamp, a dented frying pan, and a bloody knife. Marcel Hill lay dead. She was arrested, but in court, she has another story.
Basically at trial, the way I was portrayed, mostly everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted off of lies.
Camilla claimed she thought Marcel was an intruder and acted in self-defense, but prosecutors were not having it.
We have no choice but to send her where she will also die. I can't believe she stands before you doing this.
Before receiving her sentence, Marcel's aunt, Diana Banks Joyner, had some words for Camilla.
I also remember the cries of help that he screamed as you plunged that knife in and out of his body.
But Camilla didn't agree with her. This led Judge John McBain to lose his cool with her.
You're gonna shut your mouth or I'm gonna have some duct tape put on it.
Well, he attacked
All right, we'll wait here for a moment so we can get her quiet.
When they couldn't find any duct tape, the aunt continued. Eventually, it's now Judge McBain's turn.
You put in 11 more to make sure he was good and dead. I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair.
Then followed the sentence. Camilla is currently serving life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's not the first time a convict has lost control in court. Just like what happened in the notorious case of 32-year-old Chad Dorman, who, on June 15th, 2023, shook his community.
One of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortune to see.
Chad returned home early. He gathered his wife and 3 sons in the primary bedroom, armed with a gun. Dorman fatally shot his 3 sons. His stepdaughter narrowly escaped the ordeal. Chad was subsequently arrested.
You're going to go ahead and fly whenever any that's going to die.
Get your hands on you. No, I ain't got nothing, man. Phone, that's it. I ain't mad, I ain't nothing.
And he showed zero remorse and readily admitted to the atrocity. Investigators later uncovered that he had been planning this horrific act since October 2022. Now, in court, Chad's remorseless spirit can't stand the prosecutor's words.
Man, they trust more than any other person on earth, the person they rely upon to keep them safe from harm. He was their world, he was their guardian, and he executed them in cold blood. We know that from his admission. One of the most monstrous, craven, cowardly acts that will ever be our misfortune to see.
Chad's trial is set for 2024. Just like Chad, we have Tyrone Johnson, who's facing charges for multiple counts of murder in Tampa, Florida. In 2018, Tyrone fatally shot her girlfriend, Stephanie Willis, and her 10-year-old son, Ricky. The incident occurred after an argument over TV preferences. Tyrone was arrested and brought in for questioning, but he couldn't believe what his hands did.
Do with me, ready? Just what made you move out in the first place? You had argued. I know this is a lot right now, Tyrone. I'm just trying to understand what happened to that, okay?
In court, prosecutors told the court how Tyrone went after his son.
The shell casings are right there in front of the bed.